Maurice Bisetto, welcome. And I was going to say commiserations. Is commiserations in order?
Yeah, possibly. We just lost the semi-final on penalties, so probably commiserations is in order. Yeah.
Now you've had a bit of time to digest it. How do you feel?
Look, I feel certainly a sense of pride in what we've been able to achieve, as in Maverick Sports Partners, over the last 24 months.
Yeah.
You know, to win an Australia Cup,
Yeah.
to win a premiership plate, to get a home semi-final, packed house of 25,000 people. There is a sense of pride there, but also a sense of, job not done. We would have loved to have, been in a grand final and given ourselves an opportunity to win a championship for the fans and supporters and members, and hopefully we can go one better next year.
I mean, as you mentioned, a terrible way for the Jets to go out on penalties. Just your thoughts on penalty shootouts. As much as they're exciting, it isn't everyone's cup of tea. But I suppose it all depends whether you win it or not.
Well, of course, when you whether you win or lose, I think there's a sense of unfairness about the outcome, and you can feel that even if you are successful and you win a penalty shootout. This is probably polarising, but I actually really like the penalty shootout. I think when it comes to a true test of skill, and that's technical skill and mental skill, the mental strength to stand up and take a penalty successfully, I think it's the perfect test.
That was my next question, because again, at first I was like, well, a lot of people going, oh, it's unfair, it's something. But I've changed my mind on penalties because, again, as you mentioned, it's a skill, and it's probably a skill that you don't think of until you get to that point where you've got to take a penalty. It's like, I think there should be more sort of people, it's part of the game, isn't it? To take a penalty and beat the keeper and do that.
Yeah, without getting into too much detail, scoring goals, like Eli scored an incredible goal, right? Yeah. Now, but that's instinct. That's the flow of the game. Making a run into that area and then instinctively being able to adjust his body to finish that, which is not easy to do, as opposed to a penalty where you need to walk from the centre circle to penalty spot. Yeah. So many things going through your mind, and then to have, the calmness and the sense of presence to then strike the ball exactly how you want to. I mean, I'm pretty sure David Beckham, didn't he slip taking a penalty once in a penalty shootout? Yeah. Some of the greatest players in the world.
I mean, do you feel like, I suppose coaches don't plan for a game to go to penalties. That's probably another reason why some players probably, and again, everyone should be taking penalties or practicing penalties, because at the end of the day, if it's 8-7, you're up, you're probably not expecting to take a penalty, but you still need to have that skill if the time comes. And, I suppose that you meet your maker at the end when it comes to that time.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill, like I said, both technically and mentally. You need that mental presence and calmness to execute what you need to execute.
It was obviously over 2 legs. Now, I said to Mark Milligan on this podcast leading up to the first leg, I remember they had a week off leading up to it, and I actually said to him, I said, have you given him a week off? And he went, absolutely not. And at first I went, oh, wow. It sort of hit me. And then I thought, no, you've got to keep him in work, but he even said after the game that if, next year, or going forward, he's going to have a look at that to maybe have given him a bit more of a rest. I suppose it's a hard thing as a coach, isn't it?
Look, Mark's a very meticulous and thorough individual, and I know him and his football department and staff will be looking at every aspect. That first game after the break, the boys, they looked a little bit flat early on, and whether that's just nerves from young footballers that don't have finals experience, or the week off, or a combination of the two. Mark and his football department will analyse that and make sure that if there is something that can be done better for the group, that they'll implement that for sure.
I suppose, with a team that's so high energy, you're pushing forward all the time, for the game to go into extra time after, 2 legs, it's always going to be a bit of fatigue in the end. And to be honest, looking at the game, I actually thought Sydney were quite good to hold on in that extra time period. Because, when you're about to win the game, and then they score a goal, the momentum shift for them to sort of... I actually thought Sydney are a chance if they go to penalties. I know that sounds strange. Your thoughts?
Look, I suppose from a penalty shootout point of view, they're more experienced. So it sort of goes without saying that they probably may have been marginal favourites to come through a penalty shootout versus a more inexperienced and youthful Newcastle Jets. So I think the sort of average punter would probably have that mindset. I think in terms of the physical nature of the extra time and the tiredness, I was really, really impressed with Sydney over the two legs. I thought they were tremendous. And part of it is when they went 1-0 up, I sensed they, I think they've only conceded since PK's come into coach. I think they'd only conceded one goal in 6 games. So 1-0 up, I think they sort of maybe sat back a little bit and allowed the Jets that bit of momentum and possession, thinking they could hold out. And in the end, they didn't. But I think they also, once they went 1-1 and went into extra time, they sort of reset to where they were for the first sort of 65 minutes of the game.
I mentioned that to Mark, when Patrick took over. It's like a different kettle of fish you've got against, because apart from one game, the Jets have sort of had their measure before Patrick came in. So it's a whole new different ball game. Here's a question. Have you heard a roar like that when Eli Adams scored that cracker?
No, I haven't. I've been to some big games. I've been to AFL grand finals and World Cup games, but no, that roar was it was something really, really special.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of you in extra time, not in a weird way. It was a case of, as an administrator, as what your job in the club, you're looking like, staring down the barrel. It's in the, well after 90 minutes, 1-0 down, and you're probably going, oh, well, it's over, like we'll start looking ahead, and then Eli scores that goal, and all of a sudden your brain's going, now there's a big week ahead now, grand final at home maybe. Here, you would have been like, your brain would have been going up and down. I'd like to think I'm a little bit more level-headed than that and try and... I do get a fair bit of anxiety when I'm watching, but I don't really think about the next week or the next game. I've spent, especially probably the last 2 months, I've spent a lot of time in sort of reflection mode, even at the games, and I spend a lot of time looking around and just, not counting the crowd, but just looking at the crowd and... again, feeling that sense of pride and satisfaction that what we thought we could achieve as Maverick Sports partners, if we executed our strategy properly, could come to fruition. And, I can see now that that's starting to come to fruition. I was telling someone this morning, I remember I used to go for a beer before every game with the active fans, and I reckon, last year there was maybe 5 active fans or 10 active fans, and then we went to 20. And to see, I was at the General Roberts before the game, just for a drink on Saturday, and the place was just full, and there were Jets tops and scarves and caps, and it's the community and the city's really sort of bought in, at least for the semi-final on Saturday, and the Anzac Day game where we had 20,000 people was also tremendous. And kudos to you as well, because you've been out in the community since you got here from day one, pressing the flesh, going to functions, sponsors, and again what you're saying about building up that confidence again, which would have been let down, because again you hit the nail on the head, is that people have been let down so much. It's almost like, how can we trust this mob? That was the feeling,
Yeah. And we still have our challenges.
Yeah.
Right. So, we have our challenges, but we are working out. Like yesterday, Rob Camilleri, our major owner, and myself went out to Newcastle Olympic versus Western.
Yep.
You walk into the ground and, after coming off a disappointing Saturday night, losing on penalty, and 5 of our club sponsors are actually at the game, right? Because they're either involved at Western, and then reconnected with Damien Zane, who's coaching at Western. They spent a lot of time in our academy. and all of the fantastic people at Newcastle Olympic as well were really generous as hosts, and we tend to do that a lot. When I'm in Newcastle, away from Melbourne, I'm generally here on my own.
Yeah.
So if there's a game on, I'll try and get to it. Yeah. So
I know in the early days, like even way back to KB United, back in the early NSL days, KB United had a lot of English imports in there, and like you mentioned, the local clubs weren't a big fan of KB United because it's like, oh, we've got good enough players in our own patch here to represent. What do we need these pommies, And that was that stigma, which again was overcome over time. But there's that closeness now between clubs now, isn't there? And I think also too there was that when the Jets had a team in Northern football playing, it was almost like, they're going, well, we've got some under-18 players here that are just as good as these emerging Jets.
Yep.
So there's that little bit of jealousy as well. But it seems like you've really parted the sea a bit.
Well, I think but that was before we got involved with the Jets. They moved all our academy teams to play out of the Football New South Wales competition, which is a really big impost on kids and parents because they're travelling to Sydney for games every second week. But I think in terms of the football ecosystem in Newcastle, I think that was a really good idea, really smart idea.
Yeah.
I think Northern might have been involved in that sort of decision.
Yep.
Having said that, I think the football ecosystem in Newcastle is can be better.
Yeah.
Right now, the clubs, they sort of work together, but they're still competitors on and off the park. A lot of them, we've been trying hard to engage with all of the clubs. I think the Jets provide all of the boys and girls in Newcastle and the Hunter with pathways to become professionals if they want. So your Will Dobsons of the world, your Xavier Bertoncellos, your Max Coopers, your Ben Van Dorsens, your Christian Braccos. These are all local kids that the Jets, provide that professional pathway. I really, even 2 years ago when we bought the club, I still could never imagine the region without the Newcastle Jets. I'm not sure where those kids, the really good ones that can be pros, where would they go and where would they turn to? They'd probably go down the road to the coasties. I don't know, but.
Escape the city and discover the magic of the Hunter Valley with HV Tours. From world-class wineries and craft breweries to gourmet food, cheese, chocolate, gin and breathtaking views. This is more than a tour, it's an experience. Small groups, relaxed vibes, local guides and unforgettable memories, all without the stress of driving. Whether it's a romantic getaway, birthday celebration, Hens Weekend, or just a day out with friends, Hunter Valley Tours delivers the ultimate wine country experience. Book your next escape now at HV Tours and let the good times roll.
What if your home could sell for more without a full renovation? From simple refreshers to complete pre-sale transformations, we help unlock your home's true value. At Mitchell & Beasley, we specialise in property styling and cosmetic upgrades to make your home stand out. Mitchell & Beasley, where presentation meets results. In the world of construction, precision isn't optional, it's essential. For over 35 years, Newcastle Sheet Metal has delivered high-quality ductwork, fabrication and installation on time, every time. From large-scale commercial projects to precision custom work, we don't just meet deadlines, we set the standard. Newcastle Sheet Metal, built on experience, driven by quality.
Did you feel that when you first came in, you're looking around going, why hasn't this worked? We've got these young kids, it's so rich, as you mentioned, in history, and it's always one thing after another. It just always seemed to be someone that had like an organisation that was organised, that can just say, this is how we do it. And it sounds like that's the way you did it. You put like steps in play.
Yeah, look, we had a clear strategy when we bought the club, and it was a 3-year strategy, and with 3 pillars, right?
Yeah.
And one was football, one was community, which is a real difficult one to execute, and one's financial sustainability, right? So the reason that the Jets have really had difficulty in many facets of what I'm going to call the football ecosystem in Newcastle is because financially it's difficult, right? So the Jets have lost a lot of money under all the ownerships, including Cons, back in the day, which is a really successful period on the field. Yeah. We're still losing money today, right? So we'll probably, by the time we get to June 26, we probably would have lost around $3.5 million. And until we get the Jets sustainable, those challenges won't go away. And having a full academy with 13 teams, essentially 250 boys and girls, that's expensive because you need 13 coaches, 13 assistant coaches. You need infrastructure. They need to play somewhere, train somewhere. Our pre-academy, we're really doing our best to try and connect those pathways to give opportunity to not just players too, administrators and coaches to have a career as a coach and a player in a professional sense. So until we get that gap, the financial gap closed, and we become sort of break even and sustainable, then the ownership issue goes away because anyone can own them, right? And then you can start making proper investment decisions. So we sit there every day saying, like, if we generate $1, where do we spend that dollar? Is it pre-academy, academy, community, and connecting with our community and our community? Do we go to one extra school? Do we go to one extra club? Do we buy better players? Do we employ more coaches? There's the allocation of capital that, when you're losing money, it's really hard to allocate capital anywhere because
it's to the average.
You don't have it.
But to the average Joe, you just mentioned that, and they'll be going, you've had a great year. You've won some trophies. You're getting the big crowds, and you're still saying, no, we're not there yet. And that would surprise people, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So we're way not there. When we bought the club, losses were about $6 million a year. We're down to about 3.5. So we've bridged that gap by half. And that's with APL distribution going from 2 million to 530,000. So there's $1.5 million the last 2 years that we didn't get that previous owners got. So we're still working. It's still a challenge. You look at the crowd on Saturday. As great as it was, none of the ticketing was ours. Right, that's all gone to APL. And so.
And the same thing would happen for the grand final had it have been there?
Yes. Yeah. So similar to NRL and AFL, the APL, the A-League run the final series across all the clubs and grounds that they use. So the grand final in Auckland this week, and even the semi at Allianz and at Coopers the week before. So that's all part of the deal. But we've come a long way this year. We played a game. It might have been our second or third home game against Melbourne City. It was very hot. It was 35 degrees. But we had less than 4,000 people at the game.
And then you're probably sitting there on Saturday night going, wish we were getting some money back from these. It was like,
it would have been nice. It would have been nice. But again, my mind is not that, like, if we need to make finals and have 25,000 people for us to be sustainable, that's never going to work, right? In my head, it's not about finishing last, but I'd love to be able to say, even if we finish last, we're going to break even. Right. And that's where we need to. That's where we need to work to. I don't think we'll ever finish last in a hurry. But I think we've got a team now and a football department and a executive team that have really keen to. What's the word? Redemption next year and really challenge for that championship trophy next season.
Well, it just is. You're a football man. I mean, I asked the question to Mark Milligan. In most countries in the world, it's the team that comes on top is declared champions. And I said, wouldn't it be terrible, if you guys get knocked out and Auckland or Adelaide or Sydney FC win this grand final, and everyone looks back in the history books and goes, oh, it was their year this year. You know damn well it really wasn't. It was the Newcastle Jets year. Would you like to see, I suppose, the growth of football in this country to sort of maybe align themselves to other, competitions around the world?
Yeah,
we have got a cup competition.
That's a $60,000 question, right? So, we're in a society, AFL, and it's a finals type culture that we have here in Australia. So, my football department, pretty sure of a different view to me. I don't mind the final series. I think it's all about self-reflection. At the end of the day, we're premiers.
Yeah.
Right. So we may not be in a grand final next week and playing for the big dance, but in a traditional football sense, we're the premiers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Personally, that's incredibly satisfying. If Millsy was here, I'm sure he'd say, "Well, we've won it. We should be the champions." I don't know. Maybe next year we finish fifth, and he might be happy we got a final series, right?
Do you know what?
I don't know.
Do you know what? I've always said this, and I even say this about NRL as well. I say if you've got a good team and you've got look at the NRL, you've got an 8-team final series, but you could rest half that team because the seasons go long, especially the A-League season.
Yep.
You rest half that team. We're still in the bottom half. Get the team together. No injuries. Some of the other clubs are starting to get injuries.
Yeah.
Build a bit of a run. Get to the semi-finals. It's almost like you could plan it like that. Not that you would, but isn't it? Because the season goes so long, it sort of rewards a little bit of mediocrity with so many teams in a final series.
Look, the ladder doesn't lie, right? Yep. So if you have a home and away season and you finish on top or you finish on the bottom or somewhere in the middle, I think that's a true reflection of the performance of the team. There's no doubt about that, right? The ladder just doesn't lie.
Yeah.
What happens is you transition from a season-long competition where the best and most consistent throughout the whole period, reaps the rewards or wins the trophy, and then you transition to a cup competition where everything becomes like a cup game where it's a one-off game, you need to win, there's extra time, there's penalties, and then you go into another one-off game. So it transitions from traditional season into cup competition, and that's different. That's a challenge. It's a challenge for players. It's a challenge for coaches. It's just a personal view. I like the finals. I grew up, following the EPL and Serie A in Italy, but I also was an AFL guy, and I always looked forward to grand final day and grand final week. And that happens too in our game. Of course, you would have seen Celtic and Hearts.
Yeah. That was the perfect scenario, wasn't it?
But it doesn't happen. It happens a little bit in Scotland because they divide, the competition into the top 6 and the bottom 6, and each have their own jeopardy aspects. So the bottom 6 are really playing off for who gets relegated. The top 6 plays off to who are the champions. So that's pretty cool, and I think works really well. So you're more likely to get that sort of grand final-esque last or second last game of the season. But in a traditional sense, it doesn't really happen that much. So I don't mind. I don't mind that finals. I know my coach is going to hate me for this, but but it is what it is. It's actually out of our control. So
well, I mean, look, with the revenue the APL would have got, they were going, no, keep the final series going. We've got 25,000 crowd, but and
not just ticketing, broadcast. What a broadcast event it was. What a
of course.
What an event. It was just a great advertisement for our game. A great advertisement for the A-League. It was just a great game.
Is a two-tiered question. Same question, but two different answers, I suppose. One is both as an administrator, but the teams in the Asian Champions League this year, coming up now, that's another challenge financially. I know I worked for the Newcastle Jets for a little while under Con, and I know when they made the Champions League after they won the grand final, they were losing. He goes, Michael, he said, we've got to have 2 different strips for every game because what happens, because at the end of the game, they change their shirts and swap shirts. This is for the group stage. Then we go for some ready if we make the next round. Just that. But you're looking at airfares, accommodation, all that sort of stuff. There's another cost factor as well that you now have to factor in.
Yeah, well, the AFC, the Asian Federation now, do provide subsidies to clubs that participate in the competition.
Yep.
In theory, that should be more than enough to cover costs of travel, logistics. Probably the key cost impost is participating in those competitions. Obviously more games.
Yeah.
There'll be 8 more games.
Yeah.
The travel and additional loads on players. They'll go from playing 30 odd games a year to potentially 40.
Yeah.
So you'll probably need bigger squads.
Yeah.
And certainly squads with more durable players. So maybe a little bit more experienced squad where players are hardened and are used to playing those number of games, both domestically and internationally.
Well, that was the second part of the question. Was now Mills, you'll probably say, well, we're in the Asian Champions League. I'm going to need to bolster the squad.
Yep.
Again, more money buying players,
Yep.
and that's another factor.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, it certainly is. But you need to do that. Like Mark is a serial winner, right? So everywhere he went, he was captain of his, captain of the Socceroos, captain of Victory. He was captain and a winner.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's no point, and this is when Mark first came in. There's no point, cutting corners and not giving him as much support as we can. Both from a resource and from a financial point of view, for him to be able to continue to be a serial winner. I'm sure the Newcastle Jets will be representing Newcastle and the Hunter on a big stage in Asia the best way possible.
Yeah. Because I know that there would have been clubs in the past that would have went, "Oh, Millsy, you've done all right with this squad. Like, you don't need any. Well, just keep going. We've got the juniors coming through."
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Look. Yeah. Look.
But but that would have happened in the past in other clubs, and even Con used to mention, that it costs a lot of money to run an A-League club, and he was putting money in his pocket and a lot of money. He did some good and bad things. Let's put that out there.
Yeah.
But he did spend a lot of money on that club, and he was like, I think one time he said, "Look at the Adelaide United. They made the final of the Asian Champions League one year." He said, and then the next year the owner wanted to just walked out. Yeah. He said, "How can a club make the final of the Asian Champions League and not make money?"
Yeah, because it's an expensive exercise.
Yeah.
And, you talk about, we talk about Mark and what he wants. He's actually, what he's done this year, we've got the lowest budget of all the A-League teams. Yeah. That's public.
Yeah.
And we are average age the youngest squad in the competition as well.
Yeah.
So what he and his team have delivered, with that, budget and that young group of players is pretty exceptional.
I was going to say,
and I don't think everyone sort of cottons on to like the actual achievement itself is pretty incredible.
I think when we say make a rod for your own back, I think it's the same as like if I was a club owner in the A-League, I'm going, we're spending all this money. Look what Mark Milligan just did up the road.
Yep.
What are we doing? We have to start thinking it, like that. In a way, not only has he changed this club, he could in a way change other clubs' perception of how they go forward.
Yep. Yeah, possibly. I'm sure it's a model that a lot of the big clubs in the A-League would be reflecting and saying, "Well, how do Newcastle Jets become premiers, or how do they win the Australia Cup, or how do they make a semi-final?" I'm sure there's reflections there, and they might try and take some learnings out of that, but I still think you need. There's a special chemistry between player group, football department, that it's a sort of a leadership and not something you can just buy.
Yeah,
If I'm making sense, I'm probably not making much sense.
No, I was just going to say, but it's the thing with Maverick Sports Group. Are they ever in a position? And I might ask the question. You'll give me an honest answer. But once you do start making money and the club starts becoming valuable as an asset, have they ever got any thoughts down the track of selling or? At this, I'm sure it's going to be a no, but you know what? You're a business as well.
Yeah, well, we're an impaired business. So as an asset, we're impaired. Well, we're losing money.
Yep.
So from a valuation point of view, making money is probably not conceptually what's going to happen. I don't think if we could get to financial sustainability and then just say. When I say financial statement, let's call it break even. And then if we do turn a profit, I don't think that's ever going to be paid out to owners as dividends. I think that would be reinvested in the club. Yeah. The main driver around Maverick Sports Partners taking on the Jets is really to create the value intrinsic in the business.
Yeah.
So, the Newcastle Jets might have been worth X 2 years ago. Hopefully they're worth 2X today or 1.5X. And if we can get to a point where we are sustainable and, whoever the owner is doesn't have to put in any money, that sort of piques your valuation. I think ultimately, I'm not sure we would ever sell, famous last words, sell the club, but what we would love to do is find the right strategic partner, because we can talk about finals and grand finals and Millsy and young squads and all that, but ultimately where we want to end up is in a sort of infrastructure space where we actually have the bricks and mortar, we have a home of the Jets where our academy teams train and play, where our professional men and women train and play, and our office staff, and it's all in the one piece of infrastructure. Now that costs a lot of money to do that, and we're trying to find the right partners and stakeholders to partner with us in that journey. And someone wanting to become a strategic partner to help us crystallise that would be the sort of the ultimate aim of our strategy.
I mean, you coming in, obviously you've got people to answer to as well. I suppose there would have been a timeline of, you've got to say you guys have overachieved, I suppose, after for the time that you've been there to be where you are now. Does the goals change? Does your bosses sort of go, well, you've overachieved here? And is it put a bit more pressure on you as an administrator now that the goalposts have changed, going, well, we've done this far,
No, firstly, we haven't overachieved. Right, we've achieved, and from a football sense, we've achieved exactly what the players and the football department and the staff have worked to achieve. So we don't think of it as overachieving in any way. To do it sustainably, right? We might have been a little bit of the hunters this year. Next year we'll probably be more like the hunted. I think when the pundits are predicting ladder positions, we're either last, second last or third last in all those predictions. We might be a little bit further up the table in those estimates.
Like that year was an anomaly. It won't happen again.
Maybe the case. I think a lot of the clubs and a lot of football community. I'd like to think they think the Jets are a real deal. I think once our girls hit their straps, we'll have both teams up there and firing and competing for silverware. I think that's going to continue with the Jets. Certainly, as long as we have the current football departments that we have in place.
In regards to being an administrator, what makes a good administrator? It's not like running a council, is it? Like a sports administrator, I mean.
I think a sports look, it's a pretty unique thing. But whether you're an administrator, coach, player, strength and conditioning, analyst, head of membership, head of community, it's all about leadership. Right, and a good sports administrator generally is a good leader. They need to know what they don't know. That's the hardest bit, to say, actually, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit down with Mark Milligan and start telling him how to coach.
Yeah.
And why did you do this move? Like, I think I might have said to him a while back, I go, I'm going to stop doubting you. You know, like, you know, when he put Max Burgess in the 6, I'm like, oh my God, what's he doing? What's he thinking now? You know, stroke of genius. I don't know if you remember that offside trap. You know, that they played against Sydney in the 97th minute.
Right.
You know, it's like, why is the line so high? What? You know, I'm like, and then it's like I've just stopped second guessing football departments because they know much more than what I do.
Yep.
And that's the same in many other aspects. So it's all about empowering and leading, and that makes a good sports administrator.
I mean, as what the job that you've got now, is again, we talk about that 25,000 crowd sellout, box office Jets. Would like to live up to now, but now you're sort of looking at you're looking at going, well, how can we sustain it, you know, and have that around 15 to 18,000 going forward as the start of next year. I mean, because again, let's face it, there is a lot of bandwagons on the bandwagon as well, which is fine. But it's trying to convert those bandwagons to staying on, you know.
Yeah, look, that's one of the things, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I don't get too caught up in the games.
Yeah.
You know, I do spend a lot of time reflecting, and I did probably more so Anzac Day was the day where we had 20,000. It's just a home and away game.
Yeah.
Effectively a dead rubber, right?
Yeah.
Because we'd won the Premier's Plate. But it was Anzac Day. We had, you know, who had the RAF as our match day partner. So we had the New Jerseys. We had all the ceremony, the Anzac Day ceremonies, which was awesome. But reflecting, I sort of looked at the crowd again with a sense of pride that, you know, our strategy is well on the way to being executed.
Yeah.
But I said to myself, I don't think I could cope if I'm sitting in this same seat next year or the year after and there's only 5,000 people there.
Yeah.
I actually think I'd have a nervous breakdown if that happened.
That's another thing too, again, with the people that are, and again, Newcastle people, Novocastrians, they love anyone that represents their city, whatever sport it is.
Yeah.
And again, you're going to get people there that's going to follow. But that's another thing too, is that, do you ever look at it as an administrator going, you know, sometimes things are flavour of the month, you know, like going to the theatre or going to the movies and all that sort of stuff. It's a fine balance between playing a great brand of football, which the Jets do, which, again, you're not telling Millsy how to suck eggs, which is great that he's playing that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, if we're going to go watch them play, if they lose, we're probably going to watch a game with about 4 or 5 goals in it.
Yep.
And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that was good. But you also know, you've been in the football game for a while, that results do matter too. And sometimes you have to play a drab 1-0 win that probably doesn't get that, you know, oh, God, that was boring. It's a fine balance, isn't it?
Yeah, there's probably, you've sort of got about 4 questions.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
So I'll take them a step at a time. The first one is, when we came on board with the Jets, one thing that was made really clear to everyone that I spoke to that were in football, especially Jets people. So, you know, one of the first appointments we made was Jason Hoffman. Right? Yeah. Obviously, Newcastle boy through and through, played 300 A-League games. You know, and he made it really clear what the expectation of a Jets team was, what the people wanted and expected. Yeah. Right? Hard-working, authentic, high energy, never say die. Yeah. Right? And then so you know, when we were talking to Mark as we were going through looking for a new coach, Mark explaining his philosophy and what he'd like to do to the Maverick sports partners was exactly what we felt was needed. Yeah. So that interaction, it wasn't we inherited Millsy's style and so be it. So if he was, you know, 2 blocks of 4, you know, defending deep, you know, it was never going to happen. It was, you know, we were inspired by how he wanted to, where he saw the game and what he was going to do with youthfulness and energy and commitment. So that was locked away nice and early. So we were always anticipating that style of play, right? And that was very, very important.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned bandwagon or fair weather.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that. I don't think people will say to me, and have said to me many, many times, the Newcastle people are fickle. They turn up when you win, and when you don't, they're just bandwagoners. And there's a bit of banter. We've got some really rusted on fans that have been there for 20 years. I'm not going to name them, but I could.
Yeah.
Been there for 20 years through thick and thin. And then as the crowd builds up, they sort of get a sense of, well, where were you when we were shit type thing.
I know some of them too.
But the reality is they're not bandwagoners, because our wagon was broken. So the minute they got on the bandwagon, the wagon collapsed, club went broke, new owners had to come in. And that's happened 5 times in 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Or 4 times with 5 different sets of owners. So I think as long as the wagon doesn't break, I think the people that come on board will stay on board.
Yeah.
My saying to the team at the moment, it's forever, not fair weather.
Yeah.
Right. And I trust the people, the football people of Newcastle and the region, to do that. And you might say, well, what would you know? You've been here 2 minutes, right? You're from Melbourne. But I've been to a couple of Knights games, and I can tell you, when you turn up to a Knights game and they get flogged by 50 points by Parramatta Eels, it's pissing rain.
Yep.
They've just secured the wooden spoon, and there's 25,000 people there.
Yeah.
You know they're going to come through thick and thin if you do the right thing by them and represent them in the right way, that they'll represent you. So, like I said, I genuinely, without getting too emotional right now, I genuinely will have a nervous breakdown if I sit in that McDonald Jones Stadium with only 5,000 people.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. Mate. You touched on Millsy, and you touched on that Anzac Day, and you mentioned this to me, and I want to bring it up. Just the sort of person that Millsy is. Now, when I called Mark, I got his number from someone, and I called him up, and he said, "Yeah, let's do it." You go to most places, and not just A-League clubs. I'm talking NRL, anywhere, any professional sporting organisation. Usually, the coach will go, or player, I need to speak to the club first. As soon as they say that, it's usually blown out of the water. And he just went, "Yep, let's do it." And I went, "Wow, he's got the confidence. He's not going to say anything stupid where you're sitting." And he was brilliant. He was so good. And you mentioned something about the Anzac Day where there was a charity game out at Jack McLaughlin Oval over at Edgeworth where he was playing on the same day. They're playing the F3 Derby.
Yep. And
he still went out and did it.
Played 90 minutes. We had Anzac Day 10 o'clock kickoff at Edgeworth.
Yeah.
Chris Turner emceed.
Yeah. R.I.P.
Right, may God rest his soul.
Yep.
Sent me a photo that day of him and Ruben. But my point was that we had 5 o'clock. We probably had one of the biggest games of the year, being the Anzac Day game. Yeah. F3 Derby. And Millsy, he'd won at that point Australia Cup. He'd won the Premier's Plate. We were going to get presented it that day. Yeah. But he hadn't won an F3 Derby. Yeah. And the only team he hadn't beaten was Central Coast Mariners. So it was an important game for him. Yeah. Right? He wanted to win that bad. Yeah. Right? And for him, and not just him, Ruben Zakovic, Nigel Bogard, Chris Soricic, who gets involved on game day to help, our NPL coach, for them to play in that game at 10 in the morning, risk injury, risk whatever it might be till 12. He played the full 90, and then go across the road, and then all 4 of them get involved in delivering what they delivered, is a testament to Mark and those men, their view on the importance of community and turning up and playing in that game. It was over 1,000 people. Yeah. It was awesome.
You get a feeling if Mark broke his ankle in that game, he'd still be on that sideline at the wouldn't he?
But you know what I mean? He was, and then you think of all the other coaches in the competition, and they just would have said no. Yeah. I've got a game at 5. Yeah. But he understands the importance of. Yeah. Don't forget he was here. He played. He played. a dozen or so games here at Newcastle for the Jets.
Yeah.
So he understands the importance of connecting with community and building that trust. He says it all the time and has been saying it. He doesn't expect people to. He wants to earn the right. He wants him and the team to earn the right to get people into those seats.
Everyone deserves the chance to live life their way. At Connectability, they support people with disabilities to build confidence, independence, and real connections in their community. With allied health services and capacity building supports for children and adults, they help people develop the skills they need to grow, learn, and thrive. From daily living and community participation to NDIS support coordination and supported independent living. Connectability is there to help you achieve your goals, dreams, and aspirations. Connectability, supporting people, strengthening communities.
Don't live near the beach and wondering what the waves are like? Then wonder no more. And check out Tez's Newcastle Surf Report on Facebook and Instagram. Up around 7:15 every morning, giving you a comprehensive view of the waves and a full explanation of what's happening with the wind and the weather and the tides and everything you need to know about going surfing and finding the best conditions. So, check it out online on Instagram and Facebook. It's Tez's Newcastle Surf Report.
But what's the price to pay? Lost generation.
At Elk Architecture, we don't just design buildings, we shape the spaces where life happens. From concept to construction, our award-winning architects bring our vision to life with precision, passion, and purpose. Whether it's your dream home or your next big commercial project, trust Elk Architecture to build what matters most. Elk Architecture, designed for life, built for the future.
Craig Foster asked a question, for me to ask Mark, mentioning about, he's sort of starting a legacy here at the Jets. Now it's a case of, his stocks are rising, and let's hope he stays for as long as he can at the Jets. But one day he's going to move on. He's got aspirations, but it's a case of trying to inbuild that philosophy that put the bones of the club, and when he moves away, that someone can come in as an easy transition. Is that a fair call?
Absolutely. So, we've been thinking, we being the board and the ownership, the Maverick Sports partners, have been thinking about succession planning already because, we knew from day one that if Mark Milligan was coaching the Jets in 5 years' time, that we probably both would have failed. He like I said, he's a winner, and he's ambitious, and he wants to be the best head coach he can be, probably coaching the biggest club he can coach. So I don't anticipate Mark to be around that much longer. I think we'll get at least another season out of him.
He's got, how many more years has he got?
He's got a 2-year contract with a 1-year option. So without getting into a lot of detail, and that's the same with players. We get asked that a lot. We want nothing more than our players to be the best versions that they can be. And every player with any ambition wants to play overseas, and we're not going to stand in the way of a player. In the same way, we wouldn't stand in the way of someone like Mark when the time comes for them to take the next step in their football journey.
I think he'd also like to, see how they'll go in Asia as well. I think that's another challenge that would be in the back of his head as well. But just staying on that,
he may want to win a championship. That way I wasn't overly, because I said to him yesterday, if you win the treble, where do you go to from there? He goes, another treble. I go, okay. Well, good answer.
Well, remember when Brian Clough took over Leeds United, that ill-fated, was it 34 days, and he was sacked. And Don Revie, who we took the place of, I think it was an interview on late night English television. It was one of the best live interviews you ever see. Because it was the old coach taken over from the
Parkinson, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't think it was Parkinson, but Clough used to go on Parkinson a lot, but it was someone else.
Okay.
And Don Revie said, he goes, well, we won the championship last year. What can you bring to the club? Because well, I can do it better. Yeah. And they said, what do you mean do it better? We only lost 3 games. And he said, well, I'll lose it with 2. It's still better. There's still room for improvement. Yeah. But, in regards to going forward, I mean, even yourself, I mean, your stocks have risen as an administrator, I think. I'm pumping up your tyres here, but it really has. It really has. I mean,
please.
You said you're from AFL Heartland. If AFL came a knocking?
Nah, man. I'm cooked. I'm 61 years of age. Where am I going?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your story, because that's another thing too. A lot of people know that you've come in, you've done such a great job, but what's what's the early days of Maurice?
I'm an accountant by background, so I spent 30 years at a firm called KPMG, probably known as one of the big 4 firms in the world, and had a good time at that period. I played. Yeah. Soccer was something that I was always passionate about, football.
Yeah. Who'd you play for?
I've played for a couple of clubs, but probably the highest club I played, I was registered with, was Brunswick Juventus.
Oh, yep.
In the old NSL, 1984.
Andrew Zinni?
Yeah, we signed the same day.
Oh, get out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great. I think they won. They win the NSL
the year after.
The year after.
Yeah, that's when 85. They had the North and South.
That's right.
The confederations or conferences.
Yeah.
So I just had the one year there. I was only 19. I'd played all my juniors at Bulleen, which is a club that my father was the founder of in Melbourne. And they play in the second tier in Victoria. And joined them as a youngster, played mainly youth team.
Yeah.
Sort of, I was probably smart enough back then at 19. I was doing first year chemical engineering at Melbourne Uni, which is a pretty big workload, and I just decided that academia was more the thing than football for me, and just played locally. A reasonable level, but I played till I was 36.
Yeah.
Finished up at Moreland City, so I was always playing.
Yeah.
Then with KPMG, I spent 3 years in London, and then got involved in the sports and leisure side of the business. So I was the audit partner for the AFL for about 7-8 years.
Yep.
I was the audit partner for Dali and Godolphin, the ruler of Dubai's racing and breeding operation, sort of head office in Sydney, but they've got a big place in the Hunter.
I know. They'd be a good partner for the Jets.
They would. Probably not the right partner. So always had sport. And then like it's sort of, I was getting, KPMG had this weird thing that partners had to retire at 50, had a compulsory retirement age. That's gone away now because it's seen as ageist, I think, or that doesn't, it breaks sort of laws of some sort. But back then at 58, you had to retire from the firm. So I got to about 53, and that's when the Western United opportunity came up, and I sort of led that bid and worked with Wyndham Council to do the...
And that wasn't easy too, because again, there was a lot of state league clubs down there that were shit canning the whole license, weren't they? It wasn't pretty down there, was it?
Yeah, look, I don't really talk about Western United too much. All I will say is the model where getting into a public-private partnership with council to have a professional team and operating out of their own stadium and premises. I don't know if you've been out to Tarneet and seen Ironbark Fields. Mm-hmm. It's quite impressive training facility that was put together by Wyndham Council. If they managed to get the stadium up, it would have been, I think, something for all professional clubs
as a
across number. Yeah, absolutely. To take control of your own destiny, multiple revenue streams by stadium and training facility ownership. It got sort of, it fell down in the execution of it. COVID coming into play in the middle of it or right at the start of it probably didn't help.
Yeah.
So hopefully they come back. But that was a really, I think, groundbreaking model for professional sports teams.
Yeah.
But I sort of agreed at that point that if we were successful with the bid, that I'd sort of leave my current employment and be the managing director of the group, which I did for 12 months. So, from day, I think we were given the licence on the 13th of December, had to start training on the 1st of July.
Yeah.
Our first game was October in Wellington versus Wellington Phoenix, and on the 13th of December we didn't have colours, name, training facility, playing facility, members, fans, platforms.
It was funny. A friend of mine, Simon Hill, we were was when I was working in Sydney for Channel 10. We were looking at putting together a documentary when the Macarthur Bulls were coming into the comp, and Rabbi Graham was I think the CEO, and there was a few people involved. But it was almost like we were doing this documentary called Running of the Bulls.
Yeah. And
it was like getting a club off the ground. It would have been a great documentary.
Yeah, awesome.
But the problem is that the club got sold before anything started. But what happened was, it was funny. They got the colours, they got everything in place. They had this great administration department, building, And one person said, they said, what, everything's going great. What do we need a football team for? Because when we have a football team, everything turns to shit after that. He said, "This is just keep it like this." But just what you touched on, just with the council down in Victoria, a lot of people are sort of saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to have the Jets to have a boutique stadium?" It would be great. Imagine the number 2 sports ground turned into something like that. Again, it's hard with council. It's a small, compact area. There's a lot of stuff. But you're always having dramas, I suppose, with Venues New South Wales, with the stadium. They could all of a sudden, we want a monster truck competition. Put the plywood down, put a heap of dirt on there, and all of a sudden you've got a rocky ground for, that's another challenge, isn't it? Is that something? But would you have to wait for someone to come on board to want to do that?
Okay, so again, there's a couple of questions.
I know, I'm sorry.
In there. So let's start. Yes, with ultimately anyone who wouldn't love to own their own stadium, right? Now, probably my answer is going to be, if you had asked me this question 3 months ago, when we were getting 5,000 people at our games, I'd be saying, Michael, 100%. Cainey, we need our own boutique stadium, 8 to 10,000, right? But then when you have 20,000 on Anzac Day, 25,000, and we'll see what happens next year. I'm not anticipating those numbers, but let's just say we continue with the form, the style of football that we're playing, the type of football, getting some wins, Millsy and his staff with potentially some of the same players, some new players, and we're getting 10,000 people or 12,000 people at the games, then I think we're fine. McDonald Jones isn't an issue per se. It's an issue when you've only got 5,000 people turning up. If you've got 15,000 people and 20,000, you don't need a boutique stadium. Now, we'd still love one because, for our girls and our academy, there's so much football content. You could play NPL finals. I think there is potentially a business case for a boutique stadium, slightly upgraded from number 2. Yeah.
Well, as you know, a lot of work that happened out at Northern New South Wales over Spears Point, I was always wondered, there's a football ground which is Lake Macquarie Roosters play at. It was this perfect shell of a ground that could become a boutique stadium, just the way it's shaped. Back in the day, you used to drive cars in, real amphitheatre type thing, and it's sort of sitting there. And I thought that they might have done something like that. I mean, I don't know, the connotations from that moving forward, but
look, I would have thought on that point that someone, an organisation like Northern New South Wales would have had the foresight to have a premier football pitch there, somewhere because there isn't really one. And that doesn't make, to me, doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense when, like I said, you're in a region with, northern New South Wales have over 100,000 participants.
Absolutely.
And, one of the things that I really liked about the Jets is there's no AFL, right? Now, when you're in Melbourne, you've got sort of 8 AFL clubs.
Yeah.
Then you've got the Storm. Then you've got the 2 NBL teams. You've got the 2 Big Bash teams. Like, it's very competitive.
Yeah.
Professional sport's very competitive. To get those fans and members and eyeballs watching you, it ain't easy. Not suggesting it's easy in Newcastle. You still got to earn those eyeballs and bums. However, we don't have the AFL headwinds that they give our game all the time.
Yeah. Now, just to finish off, we've got to do our live Purnell Trophies sponsorship read. Purnell Trophies are legends that know how to make people and business stand out. Trophies, medals, promotional gear, corporate branding. To be honest, they're more than just a trophy shop. They're in the business of putting hard work on a pedestal. They've been doing what they do since 1957. It's unbelievable. They do custom and novelty items as well. Does anyone fall asleep at Maverick Partners? At a boardroom meeting or something?
No.
They're
very lively, actually,
if they did,
Michael.
You could have a novelty trophy for them. Their Purnells would do it. They're the leaders of monuments. They do a quick turnaround. Purnell Trophies, 24 Broadmeadow Road, Broadmeadow. Phone them on 49612 666. And on behalf of Purnell Trophies, you got to...
Thank you.
You
actually got my name on it and everything.
You didn't win the grand final, so we thought the next best thing was to give you a trophy.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you, Purnell Trophies.
It's got a nice little etching on the
bottom.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So this will now sit pride and place next to the Australia Cup and the Premier's Plate.
Sure will.
Mate, thank you for coming in.
No, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, and we love you to bring you back in early in the new season. And can we expect a bit of a scoop? Can we get some new players coming in soon?
There will be some new players coming in soon.
Brilliant. No worries. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time on Incredible
Thanks,
Aussie
Michael.
Cainey.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.